we need farmland. We need it for food. We need it for fiber. Provides a lot of environmental benefits in terms of, carbon sequestration or water conservation or storage. And so finding a way to move forward with developing out enough solar energy to meet our energy demand without just kind of having it be a wild, wild west of finding as much farmland and putting as many panels on it as you can.
Yeah.
We've started these in the past with the cheers, so you might as well start this one with the
Okay, great.
I'm in the minority here. We got mate drinkers.
Yeah, you're the first guest, Greg.
I am. Wonderful. Okay, great.
And we've upgraded out of the basement to the office, the headquarters here in Troy. So, just grateful to have you. And I know, this partnership with AFT has been really fruitful for us.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to hear your, background within, why you got into this world of AFT and, what it's been like for you to work for farmers and with farmers to, preserve farmland and preserve a way of life. So.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks so much for having me. Always great working with both of you. We come across a lot of partners, or I have in my time at AFT. It's been almost 20 years since I've been there, and not all feel like they're in it for the right reasons. And I guess the right reasons in my mind would be to actually serve farmers and ranchers and rural communities. And I definitely have always gotten the sense from you two that is not just your business, but kind of like a core value that you both share. So it makes it really, rewarding to get to work with you all.
Yeah, we're at an exciting time with the energy component on farmland preservation and farm viability and farm vitality. Really, economically, it's a diversification if done the right way.
Yeah.
Really love what is happening with the Smart Solar program, and glad to be partnered. 20 years, a long time. How are you embracing that? Are you philosophical or just continue on the gas pedal at full steam?
No, I mean, so I've been involved, I would say, in agriculture since I was 14 years old. So it's been, I'm gonna have to do the math in my head, 26 or 27 years now that I've been in the agriculture farming industry. So I grew up, my family are not farmers, but I grew up working on a family farm in the town that I grew up in Simsbury, Connecticut. And this, just like we were talking about before, this was a farm that actually just celebrated its 100th anniversary last year. And it was originally a dairy farm, right? As many farms in this region were, 50, 75, 100 years ago. But it transitioned into mostly specialty crop farm. Sweet corn was like kind of the thing that we were always known for growing up. People would drive from miles and miles away just to get our super sweet butter and sugar, which is just kind of the the yellow and white kind of speckled corn. And it was a really great way to grow up as a teenager. And I think I wrote a blog about this on the AFT website, but I think for me, growing up in the the 90s and 2000s in New England, it was really, you were really pushed to, be a doctor, be a lawyer, go into finance. There was just jobs that I think everyone's parents just wanted them to pursue, right? These ones that were popular at the time, well-paying, well-respected. And I think that I never really, that was never going to be my path, whether or not my parents wanted it to be or not. And I think what farming allowed me to do, especially farming at Rosedale Farms in Simsbury is the name of the farm, it allowed me to see that like there was another path forward in life that didn't involve, going to school, getting a job that you hated for 40 years and then retiring. And so I found that, I loved it. I worked there the summers when I was in high school, sometimes after school in the busier months of like May or September. And then I would come back when I was in college at George Washington University in DC and work the summers there too. And I think one of the interesting things about the farm is that the family that owns it, kind of the guy that runs it, my boss, Marshall Epstein, he's actually a teacher at American International College in Springfield, and he teaches entrepreneurship. So he's always brought, I think, a very interesting lens to the farm, right? A lot of farmers, if you talk to them, the thing they hate most about farming is having to sell whatever they produce, right?
Yeah.
Like, they love raising animals, they love growing food, they hate the marketing component of it. But I think Marshall really always, even if he didn't maybe love it, he really understood the importance and the value of doing that. So I think when I was 15, we planted a vineyard there. We started bottling our own wine, bringing people to the farm to do wine tasting, then started doing farm-to-table dinners, then started doing a corn maze and a fall festival, really getting into the agritourism wave as it kind of like swept into more rural communities during that time. And I tell this story a lot because I see a lot of parallels between the way that agritourism became popular and then what farmers are doing now with solar, because there were a lot of folks when Marshall was doing the wine tasting and the events and stuff like that would be like, oh, well, you're not a real farmer anymore, right? Like, it's not all about growing food and selling food. Like, you're doing all these other things. You're bringing people to the farm. You're like an event producer. And I think from his perspective, it was like, well, no, I'm doing what I have to do to be able to keep farming, right? To be able to make a living for myself and my family. And I think there were a lot of people at that time that didn't look super favorably on like the agritourism type of stuff, and I see a lot of similarities to solar now. I think, it provides similarly like a great opportunity for farmers that want to develop an alternative income stream to whatever they're producing. And it's not necessarily looked upon super favorably by their neighbors and other farmers, but I do think that's something that's going to change as more farmers do this and kind of see the benefits of integrating solar into their operations from an income perspective.
Yeah, no, that's for sure.
It reminds me of earlier this week, sitting down with Chris and how he was talking about getting into organic farming and what that was like in the farm to table CSA dynamic, that shift in what the businesses around him, what the farms around him were doing, and his innovative as a first generation farmer approach to it, and change is something that is inevitable. There's no doubt about it, right? But there's a beauty within preserving a way of life and a way to connect and what it means to stay rooted in the land and respect the land. And I know we were talking with David and Suzanne also last week about solar done the right way and solar being done the wrong way, and right, that smart solar program through AFT, and the dynamic is one where keeping the solar dollar in the farmer's hand is more important than just shipping funds down to big investors in the city and shipping power at large scales out of rural America into city areas. So.
I think you guys have a statistic, 83% you estimate, and that's kind of pretty well researched. It's not just a number thrown out there.
Yeah, it's a combination between data from the Department of Energy and data from American Farmland Trust Farms Under Threat report. And it basically just shows that a lot of upcoming solar development is most likely to occur on farmland. I think there are obvious reasons for that, right? Farmland is typically cleared, right, already. Mm-hmm. It's typically fairly flat, and a lot of it is near transmission lines, so it becomes kind of low-hanging fruit for developers that see, these large swaths of land that they're not, they don't have to clear at all. They're already clear. So it is anticipated that's where a lot of the development is going to occur. And, one of the reasons that AFT launched our Smart Solar initiative is similar to what you saw, I think, 20 or 30 years ago with the Smart Growth initiative around the country, right? Smart Growth came to be to address basically housing sprawl, right? So housing sprawl into farming in rural communities that was breaking up contiguous farmland and creating this competition for land. And so the smart growth movement came about to say, okay, we know that we need more housing in America, right? We need more housing, we need more affordable housing. We can't just say don't build any new homes. So it was like, how can we formulate a strategy to build smarter, right? And so this was idea of mixed use developments, right? Buildings that had residential and retail and sometimes commercial in the same areas. Trying to incentivize growth to not just spread into the rural communities, but more, centralized in the places that were already urbanized. And I see a lot of through lines to our smart solar initiative there, because we're saying energy demand is rising. We need more energy. We need more affordable, renewable energy. And we can't just say that farmland is off limits and we're never going to do it there, right? So what we're really trying to do is just do it better and do it in a more nuanced way that takes into account the needs that we have. Like, we need farmland, we need it for food, we need it for fiber, provides a lot of environmental benefits in terms of, carbon sequestration or water conservation or storage. And so finding a way to move forward with developing out enough solar energy to meet our energy demand without just kind of having it be a wild, wild west of finding as much farmland and putting as many panels on it as you can.
Yeah. It's a little bit alarming. Went to the second Farm of the Future Summit by the Sonoma County wine growers towards the end of last year. And the first one was so effusively positive 2.5 years ago. And I mean, it's one of the most beautiful areas to grow grapes, and
Gorgeous.
People go a long distance to see the, to do the wine tasting, get quality wine. And this time around, it's like, the quote that sticks in my mind is like, we don't want to become like Walnut Creek, which is a part of Orange County, California, that used to grow walnuts, but now it's all very expensive homes.
Right.
And yeah, people would love to have a house in Sonoma County, and less grapes are getting purchased by the big wineries that they've had the historical relationships with. So it was a positive part of the conversation to say, hey, a subset of your beautiful winery with rolling hills in solar, that's not necessarily the best area for growing grapes,
Right.
is a protective measure. And one for 25 years for not putting housing in. And in 25 years, who knows where the wine industry will be. It'll still be around in Sonoma County. And maybe there's resurgence and diversification in other ways. But, I mean, once you put in housing...
it's never coming out. It's never coming out.
It's never coming out.
Yep.
So it was a really interesting conversation. We feel like there is a role for solar. And that's not flat farmland. That's like the kind of landscape that you envision in Sonoma County is winding and beautiful for microclimates for growing different types of grapes. So there's a continual need for thinking forward in agriculture. And solar can be positive and additive. It's also, and that's part of what I like about our partnership with American Farmland Trust, there's a danger component of the utility scale solar. We got the demand reality peaking. I mean, we're analyzing bills, it's double-digit increases, if not. I mean, Chris's was 183% in 1 year. In National Grid in Columbia County, New York. And, he's happy to have put solar in way back in 2014. His usage has increased. It's like sobering to analyze those bills.
Yeah. And I think farmers have always had a tough time managing expenses because you need so many inputs in order to farm, right? Like, you need seeds, you need, feed, you need water, you need labor, you need processing capability, harvesting capability, tractors, machinery. And I think for many years, farmers just really focused on the income side, like how to increase their income enough that it offset those really high input costs. But I think today, like, inputs have gotten so crazy and the income generation potential has not really kept up with that. So I think more farmers are looking at, okay, how can I decrease some of my costs while keeping my production stable? And solar, like, is one of the, in my mind, one of the lowest hanging fruits to offset your electric costs, because especially with how expensive it is in certain markets, like here or where I live in Sonoma County. I mean, there's people, I can only assume from what I'm paying for my little house, paying tens if not hundreds of thousands of dollars a year in electricity costs. And if you can, invest maybe even 1 year's worth of electricity costs into a solar system that you'll be able to yield benefits from for a long time after. I mean, that seems like a good investment to me.
Yeah. Wasn't as high a number as Columbia County, New York, but we were on the phone with folks we met at the American Farm Bureau Federation Convention in Anaheim from Illinois, 900 acres, 15 cent, offset rate.
Yeah.
In Illinois.
Right.
In the middle of rural part of Illinois, and they're talking about input costs going up on all fronts. They've been farming the corn and soybeans for 50 years.
Right.
And so it's a top 10 cost of doing business, in most of the country on most farms. So if you can reduce that cost and step towards not only cost control, but envisioning how you can diversify your farm moving forward.
Right. And
no, my mind just goes to the innovation within change and within Talbot. That's a big project. A lot of eyes are going to be on it in this topic of agrivoltaics and that dual use reality of being able to produce food and power at the same time.
Not everybody knows what Talbot's is. You want to give a little preface?
Yeah, I mean, Charlie Talbot, he's a strong force in not just the peach, orchard community, but in his community, and somebody that saw the benefit of solar, put it on his roof, and for his storage facility, and is now decided to partner with us in terms of doing this agrivoltaics project. So we've got these, solar panels 15 feet above the ground, above these peach trees, and it's at an exciting stage, right? Of the panels up, the danger of frost is stronger than ever, right? I mean, Colorado's seen some crazy weather this season, and I think Mike said the other day it was like 71 degrees,
right.
And a frost really is a dynamic that can hurt those peaches. So that was one of Charlie's points in terms of why he,
Yeah, and about 20% of their production now is grapes for vinifera. They sell to the California market from western Colorado. And he took us into his tap room, Mike and I. We had a good tasting of different wines that they produce. Cool. And it was very sobering to hear they lost, at one point they were all apples.
Yeah.
And they lost their whole apple market. And so I think part of his disposition towards innovation, is this very formative experience early in his life as a farmer of what do we do now? Both him and his brother said, we just got married both in the same year. What do we tell our wives? So the risk tolerance of farmers is so much higher than most people in society. And it's not easy to take on that much risk because there's so many variables that are out of your control, like the weather. So
right.
I know we're going to play a segment in the actual podcast of him from the documentary that Chad put together. And I think, I understand better how he is comfortable with the risk of agrivoltaics.
Right.
Because he had that early farming experience of we're 95% apples. We just lost that whole market. What are we going to do?
And I think, farmers are comfortable with risk, but they're always trying to manage risk as well, right? Just like we all are in our own lives or careers. And I think solar is a way to hedge your bets when there are market disruptions, there are changes in consumer preference, right? If you have an income stream that is reliable, that is going to either generate income for you or generate cost savings for you on a monthly and yearly basis, that allows you to weather some of those storms a little bit better, or in years that are really good, reinvest that money into the farm as innovation dollars, right?
Yeah.
Well, I really appreciated the film that Chad Weber put together on this, Save the Farm, Save the Future. And I had a little refresher the other day because we got to meet with him and talk with him. So I watched, the documentary again, the film, and I thought it'd be worthwhile to, rewatch that section of Charlie, and think about where that stage was back in the day when, there was that decision juncture to.
Are you going to do that? So
yeah,
that
and then we can,
comment on it?
comment on it, yeah.
Yeah.
You got the laptop. Got to flip it so that we could see it.
We're relatively
But
quick with.
while he's doing that, on the risk factor, we've had, we're on our third or fourth project with my cousins, 5 Crowns in California.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom's Italian family, we used to laugh because they would love to go to Las Vegas and Lake Tahoe
Yeah.
to relax by gambling.
Mm-hmm.
And they would always say, this is low risk compared to what we do for a living.
That's right. And you know the consequences, either positive or negative, much faster than when you put something in the ground and wait, 3, 4, 6 months to see what the market's gonna.
That's different than a blackjack table or a crap table.
Right, where you're winning or losing right away.
When we looked at solar power generation for our farming operation, they wanted to put them on rooftops or, in most cases, took land out of production. My thinking was, no, I want to explore the possibility of a symbiotic relationship between orchard production and power generation.
For the local growers here, especially the larger growers, if you're running a packing shed and a cool store, you have very, very high energy needs in the middle of summer. And so they're looking at it as a means of cutting down on their energy cost, but also benefiting their crop. It's sort of like a win-win.
I see 3 potential benefits. 1, to achieve some degree of frost protection.
The data shows that the panels actually raise the night temperature. So it stays warmer under the panels compared to no panels. There have been publications that say you can raise the temperature by 2 centigrade. That would be almost 4 Fahrenheit. That's the difference between 100% spring frost damage or maybe no spring frost damage.
2, to have some degree of hail protection. And finally, 3, to manage the light prescriptively. There could be less evapotranspiration if it's a real hot day, and I can shade them some more. Less sunburning on the fruit, and yet there's times in the year I want them to have that full light.
A couple of years ago, for example, we had sunburn on half of our apple crop. Too hot, too sunny. You end up losing half your crop. So agrivoltaics in that respect seemed like, hey, here's a technique by shading plants at certain times that may be beneficial.
First one in the Western Hemisphere, right? In terms of doing
Orchard.
agrivoltaics on an orchard.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of eyes are going to be on it, right? This isn't just a study that a university does. This is a real farm, right?
Right.
And what are our first thoughts when we watch that and think about where the project's at today?
I mean, so a big part of my job at AFT is outreach to farmers and ranchers and landowners about opportunities in solar and agrivoltaics. And one of the things we hear from people all the time is that, they get it theoretically, academically, they can kind of understand that, yeah, maybe this is something that could work for me, but it isn't until they have an example site that they can go to, see it in the field, and talk to the farmer that it really clicks for them, right? And That's one of the issues in America, is that we actually have very few agrivoltaic sites in this country that are not solar grazing, right? That are not just running sheep underneath them as an O&M cost reduction. Very few sites that people can go see to see specialty crops or orchard crops or leafy greens or things like that grown underneath it. So we hear all the time that farmers want more examples to go see, to know that it's actually working, again, not in a research setting, but in a real farm. So one of my first reactions is this project and this site, I think, is going to inspire and convince a lot of farmers that this is something that could really work for them.
Yeah, and I mean, the cooperative extension network around the country with the land-grant universities, Horst, who was just quoted there, is going to be documenting the production under the panels compared to a control rows that are right next door. So it's important to get that data. And it's been really incredible to see Charlie with his brothers making the decisions to get it to this point, and then going to his tap room, seeing his nephews leading the wine making efforts. Mm-hmm. So the multi-generational farm business survives and thrives by innovating. If my uncles had cantaloupes in the summer, iceberg lettuce in the winter, my cousins and now the next generation have 25 different fruits and vegetables.
Right.
And they have made a life of themselves of being able to have a good life and not just be milking cows 365 days out of the year,
right.
2 times and now 3 times.
Yeah.
So the solar they get, because it's a cost minimization, but then there's an aspect where they should be gaining more of the energy dollars that are happening in their community, and not just having that carted off mm-hmm. by large financial institutions that have gotten the tax credits and got that prime farmland to get double-digit returns themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Well, money is a factor here, and I think whenever you talk about agrivoltaics, obviously there will be added costs. You're putting
right.
Steel beams 15 feet in the air, right? It's an added cost, and to look at that 25-year cash flow for Charlie with this project and see a 2-year payback, right? That's a big deal in the solar industry for any project, and a big portion of that is the dynamic of grants, right? Mm-hmm. And a large part of our business is grants, and I think policy-wise, and I think narrative-wise, in this solar conversation, there can be misleading and manipulating of what actually positively impacts rural America and farmers. I think agrivoltaics is a topic that is something that everybody can really get behind, mm-hmm. right? In terms of you being able to produce food, you being able to produce power, cut down costs, and I know we're still waiting on REAP right now, and from rumors we heard, right, it's on ground up to 50 kilowatts, right? What about agrivoltaics? Mm-hmm. How does that fit into the picture? Should there be policy pushes to
Well, aside from the grant component of the conversation, we've seen the delta on costs reduce pretty dramatically. I remember the first agrivoltaic project I saw in Massachusetts, 15 years ago, and every farmer that I talked to said, way too expensive, this will never happen. Mm-hmm. But 15 years later, costs in solar have come down pretty dramatically. There's still a delta, but the delta's smaller. And if you have the kind of double-digit increases in escalation rates that are happening right now mm-hmm. because of the data centers and the increase in demand, it's a protection, and you can cover that delta. And if you think about the 3 factors that are moving the Talbots to say, hey, let's try this on 420 kilowatts, and if it works, we'll do second phases and third phases. You notice the first phase in the photograph was roof mount. So mm-hmm. they've been thinking about solar for at least 10 years with that first project.
Right.
So they know the numbers. They verified out the numbers with the roof space of their packing facility. Mm-hmm. This is a next phase, and many of our best customers are multi-phase, where you don't want to bite off more than you could chew in a
Sure.
first phase. There's some trepidation. I think we've experienced that. But then once you see, hey, this really works to my benefit, and it's like, okay, what's the next stage in this? And the younger generations in a multi-generational family business,
Sure.
they really get it. This gets them excited to have the monitoring on their phone, on their laptop.
Yeah.
They understand that this is enhancing the economic stability of the farm
Yeah.
business.
I know that like things happen and all situations are different, but have you ever had a farmer that has done this and didn't see benefits to it?
Done solar, period.
Yeah, done solar.
Yeah, because agrivoltaics is a
Yes, done
relatively
solar.
small subset.
Yes.
I would say most of our 131 experiences have been very successful. The entity that comes to mind is a dairy farmer in Georgia that got the loan for the solar, and he took over the family dairy operation when his brother had committed suicide. He was a minister. He is a minister. He's an incredible human being. His wife is a teacher, and I think that, there was a big investment for robots to milk. This was an additional investment that got covered with a loan. He had to sell his dairy farm.
Yeah.
And, I know it was a very hard decision. I don't think he's ever said that he regrets having done the solar, but we're in a process of trying to work with the bank that had the loan and the new farmer and show them this actually pencils out nicely.
Right.
This is an asset that you should also be purchasing because it will save you money. So that's like an extreme example.
Sure.
But how extreme is it if you look at farm numbers in the country? There's a
Right.
lot of farms that have gone out of business. And we always try to measure what's the probability that this is a 25-year asset.
Right.
That happened in that particular situation. I felt bad that it happened. So there's a couple of examples like that out there. We can't be 100% sure that this is going to, it's not going to by itself solve
Sure.
all of the challenges that every farmer has, but it's lowering a cost of doing business.
Of course.
For sure.
And I only ask that question because I think there is skepticism among farmers if like it is the right decision or if it will have benefits. And so it sounds like for the vast majority of the farmers that you've worked with, they've definitely found either cost savings or income potential, things that really helped with the viability of the farm.
Yeah, and I would just say it is a long-term decision, right?
Right.
Farmers are used to that. Right? We had Max Russell talk about that in terms of planting his apple trees and when they come to fruition. And recently sitting down with David and Suzanne talking about that, right? In terms of them investing in their employees, having family that will take on the farm potentially into the future generations, and that being an aspect of it. And I actually have a clip of David and Suzanne if we want to watch that,
Yeah.
because that was just last week, and I think it's definitely relative to that conversation of what it means to invest into something in the long term and have that sustained, because one of the words Suzanne uses is sustainability, and sustainability, when you first hear it as a kid, right, you think of like, everything being green or whatnot, but it's been cool to hear from farmers on that term sustainability of, what it means to sustain for the next generation. And, Suzanne is a great example of that in so many ways, and I know this is the year of the woman in farming, so we definitely want to promote her, and not just her, but all other women in farming. And I think David and Suzanne have a beautiful dynamic, and I loved hearing like their first story of how they met.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think it's
Let's roll the tape.
he's good about that, cutting me off when I start to rant.
We're trying to set things up so that somebody else can take it from here. what that's going to look like and when and how that's going to happen, we don't know. But we think like projects like the solar project are really setting up this business for the future, because we are investing in a really strong core group of staff that is really important to us. We're also trying to be really mindful with our costs and locking in our energy costs as a business for the next 20 years. That is a really smart way for us to really invest in the future by just managing some of those core costs for the business. And we love the fact that, hey, we got to work with a local company that helped us put it together. We got to procure solar panels that were manufactured in the United States. That really, there was things that really aligned with our values throughout this project. It also made good business sense. Like at the end of the day, like it was good for us and the future of our family business, and that is like a primary driver. Our customers also just love the fact that we're also taking steps to help deal with climate change and some real problems that exist with the world. And so it's really nice that it's a solution to a lot of different things for our business, for our community. So just win-win-win.
Yeah, it makes us more sustainable. We are able to keep farming, keep our business for a lot longer, and grow. Not just stay stagnant or what am I going to do next. I feel like our business is growing in a way that it's sustainable for the future. So I feel fortunate in a lot of ways. And gosh, we couldn't have done the solar project without David, because he put in all of the paperwork. And really that is the first step to making it happen, and working with you and all of the systems. It just lined up so nicely, and Mary Beth came and we barely had to do anything, sign this, and this is who's coming next week, and this is what's going to happen. So it just it made it super easy for us to do this project, and not just the paperwork, but all of the systems in between. Us bouncing ideas back and forth, figuring out the right solar panels to purchase. It was really important, the American made, and just all of the decisions were nice. Not for me to make all of the decisions, but it was like a joint effort of making the right decisions for our business.
We both have busy full-time jobs, so our job is to make it easy. Starts with building up some trust, and I know Mary Beth is very strong at that. And that's important for us.
Yep.
Yeah, she was wonderful.
No, that's great. And honestly, I think the term sustainability, I feel like, is very loaded now, especially in agriculture, because it's kind of been co-opted by brands and marketers to try and gain, a little bit more of a market share, or to be able to increase the cost for certain goods, right? You can say, oh, these are sustainable eggs, and this is sustainable beef, but there's no verification program for sustainable, right? But I think when you break apart from that, right, the word, the how the term is used in agriculture, if you just think about what it means to sustain, to sustain means to just be able to keep going, right? To be able to do something that you're able to maintain for a long period of time. And I think in that way, in my mind, that, just listening to them talk right there, that is what I think that is what they're referring to as sustainable, right? More so than the environmental benefits or any of that, it's that it is giving them the ability to keep going in this path that they've chosen as farmers. And I think that there are not many things that you can do as a farmer or a landowner in terms of an investment that is either going to pay you back like that or reduce your costs so substantially. And it just, it is very hard to sustain a career in farming. It's very hard to pass farming business down to the next generation. And if you can invest in something that is, as we've talked about, I'm not going to say it's impossible to fail, but it is very well proven that when you go solar, there are lots of benefits that you are going to yield. And so that's just great. It's great to hear that they're thinking about this as a long-term investment, as something for the future. It's something that's going to outlive them, if not the system itself, then the benefits that it's providing. I
talked to Steve Clark, our first customer from 2009 today. It's Prospect Hill Orchards in the Hudson Valley. 50 kilowatt system on their little refrigeration building. And we actually quoted him a couple of years ago in a New York Farm Bureau article where he said Central Hudson just proposed a 12% increase in rate. This has been around for 15 years for us.
Right.
That was 2 years ago. It's 17 years now. We've been protected from those increases. I don't worry about them. And talk about dramatic change, he said to me 75% of our apple orchard is going to be, an eco village that we drew up on the boards a long time ago. Now they have a buyer for that. But they have a direct market business that's thriving. His daughter still goes to farmers markets. The new building they built is going to be a wedding venue up on the second floor, and they're doing hard cider.
Yeah.
And so they're going to make more money, maybe a smaller footprint. They don't regret that first solar installation. We're not pushy salespeople either.
Right.
But that new building is going to have solar on it at some point. Because I think it's proven itself out over the 17 years.
Right.
And it was great to catch up with him. We'll interview him when they get back from, he and his wife are in Florida for a couple of months in the winter now, and so he'll come back at the end of March. On your schedule.
Wow.
On your interview schedule.
You don't hear a lot of farmers that can take the summer off or the winter off,
Well, his daughter, he's got 6 grandchildren.
Yeah.
So it's really, a lot of the conversation was about his son Brad and his daughter Pam that are really moving things forward. She continues to go to farmers markets while he's down in Florida. And I think they're at that stage in their family's life. So a few years older than I'm 63. He's probably pushing 70. So he gets to golf and do a little bit of boating.
Yeah.
That's how it should be.
Well, one thing that you said that hit home was, what it means to have that, farm in the community. And a topic earlier this week with Chris was in regards to the CSA program and, how small farms really, tie in to communities and are at the root of what it means to, feel that local dynamic. And, I know the tagline of no farms, no food is one that, is honestly, I hear it as a call to action, right? I think I told this story to you the other day, but I had it in my buddy's garage. We make music in there and have a lot of parties in there in San Diego, Andy, and a lot of that space is there's love on a neon sign is oh, this is not really positive. This is kind of like a downer, right? And I was like, no, you're seeing it wrong. It is a reality that a lot of farms are in this awful dynamic, right? But I do see it as that almost call to action, right? And we need that.
I have the privilege to teach courses in different places. Cornell and Notre Dame have invited guest lectures, and I always started by, all the students pop in the world population clock onto your phone.
Right.
8.3 billion people. Softball question: how many of you think these people should all have access to healthy food and be able to live full lives? Everybody raises their hand. And then we jump into it as well. If we're getting tens of thousands of acres taken out of prime farmland that takes hundreds of years to get to that productivity out of production for, how many of you think we should use more renewable energy, more solar? Most raise their hand. How do we square those two objectives, right?
Right, and I think there's a scale and an issue and just an unfamiliarity with agriculture, right? We come from a country where 100 years ago, most everyone was a farmer or grew their own food because that's how you survived, right? You had to grow or raise your own food or your own animals. And, as society has progressed, people have moved into more urban areas. much fewer people now have a direct connection to farms and agriculture. And I think when you don't have that connection, it can feel difficult to get upset about the loss of, you know, what, like you said, 100,000 acres. But if you're like, oh, this is a farm that I grew up going to, I grew up working on, that is like a pillar of my community, I think it becomes more real. And so that's why I always, you know, I'm a big advocate of farmers markets. I'm on the board of my local farmers market in Sebastopol. And I think one of the best things we can do for agriculture is connect more people who didn't grow up on farms, who don't have that experience, with farmers who can help them understand what these challenges are that they're facing every day to continue growing food and raising animals. Because I think a lot of times, you know, when you meet a farmer, they're putting on a happy face. They're trying to tell you their story. They're trying to sell you their wares. But like, there's very real, very hard stuff that is going on that they have to tackle every day. And, you know, just going back to the beginning where I was talking about my story, you know, I wouldn't be sitting here today without my experience working on a farm growing up. I wouldn't be working at AFT. I wouldn't be on the board of my local farmers market. It just has provided me so many opportunities over the course of my life that I don't want to see farms like that go out of business, because I want other kids to be able to have those opportunities. And if solar is a way, and I think it is a way, to keep more farms in business, to allow more kids like myself to experience what it is to be a farmer and to grow food, that's a multiplier of positivity, I think, for everyone in the long term.
Yeah, for sure. I think I'm ultimately optimistic. Would you say you are? Because I know it's hard to stay optimistic when you hear.
I'm optimistic because, I mean, I think one of the things that David said in that clip about just it, you know, solar being just smart business for them. Like, farmers are not dumb businessmen and women. They're just not, right? Like, if they were, they wouldn't last very long in this industry, because expenses are so high and margins are so thin. So I'm really optimistic about, you know, if more farmers kind of like overcome whatever barrier it is to embracing solar and sitting down with folks like you all and actually having the conversation, opening their books, looking at the numbers in terms of their expenses, their payback period, stuff like that. I'm really optimistic that a lot of farmers are going to look at this and say, how could I not do this? Right? How the numbers just, they make so much sense. I don't know how I can not do this and keep going. So I feel optimistic that as we're able to get in front of more folks and really show them the nuts and bolts of what it will mean for their farm enterprises, that we're going to be successful.
Yeah.
I see a huge part of this correlating to a question that I asked Jason Storm, you know, the dairy farmer in Nevada. It's a few months back now, but it was, you know, what would be one of your goals for that you would like to see for the future of farming? And he talked about how, you know, 5% of the world is are farmers, and then that's feeding 95% of the world. And, you know, being able to connect people to that dynamic and have that more like personal relationship, like you were talking about, is vital. And, you know, he told a story of a bunch of Boy Scouts coming onto the farm and you know, absolutely loving it. Absolutely loving it. And, you know, at one point he was like, I gotta get out of here, you know, I got work to do. You guys could stay and keep going. And,
Right.
yeah, I know that you know, I really appreciated it at the, you know, age of 13, going and doing a whole summer every single day, you know, volunteering at the local food banks farm. And yeah, I know that's not everybody's reality of, you know, that lifestyle, right? But there's always ways to connect more, you know, even if you're walking down your grocery store aisle to see a piece of, you know, a vegetable, and, you know, think about where it's coming from, right? We don't really think every time we turn the lights on. It's a lot different.
That's a good point.
You know, in places where there isn't that access to electricity. And, you know, we've done a lot of work within Let's Show the Sun on that very specific topic. And yeah, I know that message of sharing the sun within this, you know, nonprofit organization is one that I think a lot of people can get behind. And yeah, I know there's a lot of shifting happening in our society that I'm concerned about in regards to disconnection from each other, right? we have these phones, these devices, these huge AI data centers being put into play, right? And so many people are losing touch with what it means to just sit and spend time with one another, especially young children, young kids, and people my age, right? So I know that when your hands are in some dirt, you're not on your phone, right? But you're also,
Well, I think at the end of the day, if more of the energy dollars can be retained by the food producers that have that land base, because there is a real danger that it goes a very different way of greater disparity.
Mm-hmm.
We've had regulated monopolies for over 100 years to provide energy at affordable prices with good, healthy profit margins baked in for them. We're in a time of innovation, but if the very forces that are moving towards the growth of those data centers and AI dominate the energy sector as well, that's greater discrepancy and less abundance to be shared. So there is opportunity that more of the energy dollar go to farmers that have the land where the solar is going to go. Let's work hard to make that happen, because that is greater sharing of the energy economics than just a good lease rate for my land for my retirement years.
Yeah, and I feel like we've danced around this but not said it directly, but like we're here talking about solar because we think it's a way to keep farms in business and land in agriculture, not to replace it and take it out, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like the idea that a lot of people have is that solar just replaces agriculture, takes land out. There's less of an understanding about the role that solar can have in actually keeping land in production. And we've talked about, a lot of the ways that it can do that in terms of, decreasing costs or increasing revenue. But I think it's important to say that clearly, right? Like, we are here having this conversation today because we want farms to be able to thrive into the future, for more people to have the experience of putting their hands in the dirt, getting off their phones, connecting with someone who maybe is very different than them politically, very different than them culturally, geographically, right? Bridging an urban-rural divide. And you can't facilitate those things happening if we're just going to lose all of our farms to housing developments, to commercial developments, to data centers, right? So I always emphasize that when I'm talking about this, like both agrivoltaics and solar in general, is that this is meant to be something that is additive to farm enterprises, not extractive.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that you have moratoriums in a lot of rural areas now, because a process came on to the rural community just too quickly without those kind of criterias or objectives. And so I remember, the Commissioner of Agriculture in New York State's a good personal friend, Richard Ball. We did solar with him in 2010. Before he became commissioner, they took all these pictures of him with this solar array on his farm as like the poster child of agriculture and solar happening harmoniously to rural communities' benefit. And it was a year or two later that, some actors came in with thousands of offer letters that kind of parachuted in, and all these rural communities and farming businesses didn't know how to handle that.
Right.
So now you have a checkerboard of moratoriums, opposition groups, Solar Saves Farms groups, and more adversarialness than I would have hoped had transpired. But I think by talking clearly about the situation, and not ideologically, but just saying, how can we do this in ways that enhances those rural communities and strengthens farm businesses?
And I think putting the decision back into the hands of the landowners and the farmers that know their land and their business and their families needs the best, right? In a lot of these places, in a lot of rural communities, it's very much just landowners' rights, right? Like, they don't want too much interference from their town government, from their state government, from their federal government, right? They want to be allowed to do what they want to do on their land because, farmers and ranchers are great stewards. But there is, some mental gymnastics that come into play when we're talking about solar, where folks that in one place are really into landowners' rights, now they're saying, no, wait, I don't want my neighbor to do that. I don't want my neighbor to do that, and I want the government to step in and tell them that they can't do it. And so, I'm not saying like all solar development is good, right? I don't think any of us are saying that. But I do think that landowners are best positioned to make that decision for themselves instead of having the government tell them what they can or can't do with their land.
No, that's a good point.
I will say I have been excited to see dynamics within communities where people are fighting against development and fighting for their community.
Mm-hmm.
So that, on the ground dynamic of, mobilizing farmers and people to connect more locally rather than just that top-down approach is vital
Mm-hmm.
towards, quality of life and success, right? I mean, there's a lot to that, but at the end of the day, I think, there is something to what it means to, be in community with others, and
Mm-hmm.
we're in a big world here, but there is there's so many connecting forces within society and within all of our different passions in life. And I love what you said in regards to bringing people across the aisle together from different places together, and I think of what does that best, and one being music and the other being food,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I'm definitely excited to go share a meal at Garlic Lovers down the street, and
That's right.
slow down to have a meal together, and I just really appreciate taking the time to slow down and talk, because I think so often we move so fast. I mean, schedules are crazy for all of us, right? And I think it is a good point to slow down, think, and talk, and learn from each other. And,
Well, I thank you for coming, and I love AFT's culture. We've gotten a good partnership going. I think it's going to get stronger, and it'll be a lot of fun to build out with a lot of different communities around the country.
Yeah, and I think from that, closing thoughts from a community perspective, I think the best way to avoid the type of development that you don't want is to incentivize the type of development that you do want to see, right?
Yep.
And so
Totally.
if you don't want to see, utility scale developments coming into town and taking, hundreds of thousands of acres of land out of production, you should really consider incentivizing agrivoltaics projects and more solar projects that actually allow agriculture and solar energy generation to, thrive together. That's what I would say for the future. Incentivize the type of development you want to see, because if you don't, you're going to see a lot of development you don't want to see, because it's typically the cheaper kind.
Yeah.
I'm excited too. I mean, we're talking about that, and we're putting together this, marketing campaign strategy in regards to Talbot.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things I pitched this week was having like a harvest party.
Yeah.
And bringing people from all sides together.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think there's anything that changes the perspective than a fresh solarized peach, that's grilled and has a little balsamic glaze on it.
That's right. Throw a little halloumi cheese in there, and I'm there.
Yeah.
They got some decent wines to, taste as well.
Mm-hmm.
In their tap room at Talbot's.
Yeah. Have you ever been to an Outstanding in the Field event?
No.
They do. I don't know if they still exist, but they used to do farm to table dinners, and it would just be one big table.
I've seen
and
those.
sometimes they'd have like 300 people just in one long table on both sides. And it was always and in beautiful places, like out in the field somewhere, on a hillside or something.
Yeah. Awesome. Let's go eat.
All right.
Thank you.
Awesome. That was fun.
Yeah.
That went well.
Yeah. Edit me out where you need to.